Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said in her TED Talk, "Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person." The Palestinian poet Murid Barghouti writes that if you want to dispose of a people, the simplest way to do it is to tell their story and start with secondarily. Start the story of the arrows of the Native Americans and not the arrival of the British, and you have an entirely different story. Start with the failure of the African state and not with the colonial creation of the African state, and you have an entirely different story. Chimamanda goes on to say, "I recently spoke at a university where a student told me that it was such a shame that Nigerian men were physical abusers like the father character in my novel. I told him that I'd just read the novel called American Psycho, and that it was such a shame that young Americans were serial murderers." Stories. Stories impact how we see and act in the world. What stories do you hold about black people, Asian, indigenous people, Latinx people, white people? Some of the stories we hold are based on what we've seen on television, on social media, in books that we've read, in people's lives that we've shared, from our own experiences. Some stories we give great power, whether on a conscious or unconscious level. The more awareness we have of the stories that we hold within us, the more choices we have in how we act in the world. For instance, if you have stories within you about how this world can be more just, equitable, and peaceful, well, that can impact how you live in the world, how you treat other people. Can make a real difference in changing the world in a positive way. But my friends, we all have stories that are not that. Stories instead that are based on pain and misinformation and fear. And those stories only hurt us and others, and do not lead to the world that we dream of. I was acutely aware of this back when the attack on 9/11 occurred. I saw the planes hit the towers and was told over and over again that Middle Eastern terrorists caused this to happen. A story that was drilled into my brain. Do you remember that? How it felt? Still in shock from these events, that very same day I went to the grocery store, just trying to find some normality to bring back into my life. I don't even remember why I went or what I purchased. But as I was checking out, I noticed a young Middle Eastern man was bagging my groceries. As I saw him, the moment I saw him, my heart was pounding. My fight or flight or freeze response kicked in, fear running through my body, adrenaline, my eyes were focused on him and only him. Nothing else seemed to matter. My mind was racing, telling me he was dangerous. He might kill me. He might harm others. It was not until I got out of the store and I closed my eyes that I was able to regain the story of my life. Regain the story of how I want to be in the world, the things that matter to me. That one story of 9/11 impacted, the one I heard on television over and over again, impacted me. In every way I saw that person and felt about that person, and any other Middle Eastern person I came into contact with for a foreseeable future. And these kind of things happen to us. These stories are fed to us all the time, in one way or fashion. Before the civil rights movement of the 1960s, what was the prominent story that was fed to the consciousness of our country? That black people were less than white people. That story, in one form or fashion, was given and led to actions and laws like treating blacks as separate but equal, though it was never really equal. So there were water fountains and schools and restaurants and stores for blacks and other amenities for whites. Although, as we know, this idea was used to suppress the rights of black Americans and that the opportunities for black Americans were not equal, the one story and the laws that were inspired by it impacted the minds and hearts and actions of virtually all Americans. But something changed. New stories began to emerge on American televisions and American schools and buses and throughout American consciousness. Many of those stories, in one way or fashion, surrounded Martin Luther King Jr. There were other black men and women as well, but it was his story that sank into the consciousness of America. How King helped lead the bus boycott. How he helped many cities around the country strike for better jobs. How he walked for justice, for voting rights. Even when people were hit, abused, ridiculed, and killed as this work progressed. And those scenes were seen on television and heard on radio all over the country, affecting the minds and hearts. And people felt empathy. And people felt that maybe what they were seeing were people like them. And maybe separate but equal was not equal. That single story of blacks being less and separate but equal no longer fit in the American consciousness, and things began to change. And we know today we are still deep into the trenches of combating racism and other isms and phobias that dominate the American consciousness. But on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, these ideas of a more complicated story, a more complex story, a different story is affirmed. And then not just for people who are black or white or Asian, but for people of any race, any culture, any group. King helped solidify the American consciousness that this country was more complex and nuanced than they knew or they accepted. There are many stories about King. We saw that when you all came up and talked. Many ways that he is in us today. And as you meditated on his I Have a Dream speech, we feel how it still affects us, influences us, calls to us. My friends, we have to be careful. Even today, when we find ourselves accepting, internalizing, or acting on a single story. A single story. Mexicans crossing the border, rioting, stealing, raping, bringing drugs in the country. A single story. We can't hold single stories. They only distort our worldview, cultivate bias, prejudice, abuse, result in pain and even death of someone considered different by that single story. For every experience, every situation, we must acknowledge that there is more than a single story. And beyond that, if we can find out what those other stories are, so that we can respond with a fuller, more nuanced understanding of the situations that we find ourselves in this world. Toward that end, I invite you to participate with me, Carol Klopner, who is a member of our congregation, and the rest of the Social Justice Committee in the 30 Days of Love project. Everyone of every age, young and old, can participate in this. The program starts Monday, January 17th, tomorrow, and goes through Valentine's Day. 30 Days of Love is hosted by the Side for Love campaign and part of the social justice arm of the Unitarian Universalist Association. What is 30 Days of Love? Well, each week there will be sent to you, if you sign up, an online playlist for individuals, for families, for communities. There's a menu to choose from depending upon your time and interest. And your day's activity can be 5 minutes of music or a full-length panel discussion. It could be a poem or meditation or a podcast or a website to explore or archival material. An introduction to a book, a powerful talk, a family project. These offerings are specially curated and are timely and are based on Unitarian Universalist themes of love and justice. You can sign up. We sent everybody an email yesterday about this. And if you didn't get that email, or if you want to learn more about it, you can go to sidewithlove.org, 30 Days of Love 2022. Why would I put this in a sermon? A sermon about stories. Well, this project offers you different stories, different ways of seeing the world, different opportunities to do justice. And my friends, if we can all do it, or as many of us can, and then come back here together with one another and share what we have experienced. It's just a few minutes a day to changing some of the single stories that you have, that you carry within you, to embrace more complex stories about who each of us is and who everyone else is. Exposing ourselves to more stories, doing activities that stretch our worldview. Well, my friends, that will change the world and will change us. We know that change is hard. But infinite hope tells us that our complex world can embrace change. We've done it innumerable times. We can push toward a more just, equitable, fair, peaceful world. And I believe that we as Unitarian Universalists are able to look beyond the one story, the one experience, the one lens to view this world. King himself said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." We need a more complex lens to see the world. So today, as we reflect on King's legacy and his impact on this country, let us consider his complex life, the complicated story about this country that we love, and what we each, and together can do to make this country better, more just, more equitable, more peaceful, more compassionate for everyone. Let us embrace infinite hope that our dream of a better world will come to pass one day. I leave you with this quote by Martin Luther King, which affirms his idea of infinite hope. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really is with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know today that we as a people will one day get to the promised land. So may it be.
Our closing hymn today will be number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. While we can't sing in the sanctuary just yet, again, because of the Omicron variant, I do encourage you to move, hum, whatever you'd like to do in your seat. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
How do you follow that song? Well, first of all, thank everyone who helped put the service together today. Steve Schneider, who's behind the curtain, doing our live stream and taking care of our campus. And Joseph, thank you, as always. Beautiful music. And Alex, thank you. And thank you all for being here, joining us. I'm so grateful that you are here with us in live and in person and online. Oh, I encourage you to look at our weekly email and the emails we send out. We don't send a lot out, but they are meaningful and helpful to know what's going on. And you can visit our Facebook page as well to see what's going on. We're going to start adding some more things from our Social Justice Committee to some of the things you'll see on our Facebook page, our private Facebook page. If you're not on it, let me know. We can get you on it. And so that you know what's going on in the world and how you can make an impact. After the service today at 1 p.m., I'm going to be leading the Building Your Own Theology class. It's both live and online, so whatever you feel most comfortable with. It's based on the assumption that we're all each our own theologian. And this invites you to build your own or be more conscious of your own belief statements, values, and convictions as you live and work in the world, to know what those are and consciously be aware of them. And this process that we're doing helps you do that. And you can drop in anytime. There'll be box lunches afterward for a $5 donation. And next week is Reproductive Justice Sunday. And this is not just here in this congregation, but it'll be across Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country. As activist Loretta Ross said, the right to have a child, the right to not have a child, the right to raise a child, everyone should have that. It's not that hard to explain. It's just hard as hell to achieve. So next week we'll look at the definition of what reproductive justice is and the consequences of so many legislatures putting restrictions on reproductive choice. Now, as we close, I invite you to look around and see everybody. Really, let's take a moment just to do that so we can see our community, the people that are with us today. You know, it's really, we don't spend enough time with each other, and I really want us to take that moment at the end of a service to really see each other. And after the service, to go up and spend a few minutes just talking to them, get to know some of the people that are here. As we leave today, I offer these words. Now, from our chalice lighting, do not think we are finished. We will never be finished. Never just done until the light of justice is behind every eye. We are braver than you have ever conceived, and you will not be the end of us. We have come to take back the world that is in the inheritance of better children, better lovers, better days. There will be love again, but justice is our demand now. Amen.